Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Regrettable Tales and Redemptive Music, the last Gasp 2016.
Thank you, Persephone, and thank you, DJ.
For the most part, very unfortunate circumstances.
Chapter 1.
Good shot.
Cousin Phil, one of a pair of identical twins, nonetheless recognized himself with unerring accuracy in the childhood photos his Aunt Erica unearthed after Christmas dinner. His brother Earl was the one who was rarely photographed without his air gun, while he was the kid with the patch where his left eye used to be.
Poetic justice.
Well known for verses with veiled messages and vague descriptions, Gabriella had turned a very special, very personal creative corner in crafting her new collection of compositions entitled Poems About the Bitch Who Pretended That She Loved Carnations and Hockey and Who Wore Lavender Paisley Tights Which Pointed Like Laser Beams Up Her Coochie Short Fake-Ass Gucci Skirt and How That Husband-Stealing Cunt Ended Up Getting Stabbed by Someone. Someone really nice.
Shorthand.
Charles made the observation today that when he encountered a grouping of 5 objects, he saw them first as 3 and 2 objects, and only when he mentally added them together would they make the total of 5. Compounding that revelation was this perplexing mystery. How did those severed fingers, no matter the number, end up in his mailbox? And on a Sunday, no less, when there is no mail delivery.
Wash up.
Wayne had affirmed that he would meet Helen on Barracuda Point Beach at sunset at 6 p.m. sharp. But so far, disappointingly, she had only found one of his legs.
Deep thought.
There was no light at all, no room to move his arms or his legs, and the air was very quickly becoming unbreathable. All in all, thought Fred, this was not much like being buried alive as it had been portrayed in the movies and on television.
Detour.
Frances put pen to paper to write her memoirs, firmly committed to recording nothing but the sunny, the happy moments of her life. Suddenly thirsty, she made her way to the kitchen, carefully avoiding the path through the living room where the bodies of her family lay, as they always had a way of bringing her down.
Cold reception.
Seated near the radio, a bit askew in his lazy boy, Cletus helped to bring in Llewellyn's favorite AM radio country station. Useless from the day they married, her husband was proving to be surprisingly handy since his recent, untimely death.
Next up.
Celia's heart was warmed when Bertrand took her aside and told her that she was like a mother to him. He neglected to tell her, however, that he had, in 2011, committed matricide in order to collect the $1,000 worth of burial insurance, which he instead spent on lottery tickets, Colt 45, and cigarettes.
Almost fall.
There were times when Sheldon's thought he hads and his dids were indistinguishable. This was just such a time, and the passengers on the plane he piloted were, for the moment at least, blissfully oblivious of his dilemma.
Debatable.
Although he couldn't be absolutely certain that the crows were chuckling at him directly per se, Kirk, never one to lose an opportunity to argue, would not leave the clearing until they ceased. At dusk, and after hours of argument, the birds dispersed. Kirk's satisfaction at having bettered them would soon be short-lived, however, for no sooner had they left than a particularly bitchy herd of deer arrived on the scene. I think he's spending the night in the woods, don't you? I think so.
Degree of difficulty.
Beatrice was a star in the infomercial world, silently playing characters visibly confused by the exaggerated and clumsy use of common products. She had made the operation of a toothpaste tubes, a knife, scissors, a pencil, hat, bar of soap, and a sock seem nearly impossible. In a twist of fate, while attempting to zip up her cocktail dress, she fractured a vertebra, severing her spinal cord. The exquisite contortions of her attempted zippering and the spasms due to the fatal injury were spectacularly histrionic, and without argument, her very best work to date.
Light housework.
Grace's mom had spared the rod. Unfortunately, she had also spared the washing machine, iron, refrigerator, and oven. They might be lucky at that.
Reality TV.
Cecily wanted to watch the irredeemable bitches of Lodi, New Jersey. Sharon had never missed an episode of Cooking Nothing Special all day and all night long, and Rob was dead set on hopelessly stupid douchebags with tons of money. He had the remote. Sharon was wielding a chef's knife, and Cecily was passing a can of pepper spray from one hand to the other. If only they had planned ahead and learned how to DVR, the ensuing massacre need not have taken place. TV can be dangerous.
Art school.
He did initially try to explain, try to reason with the woman, long before he resorted to using force. Even then, he had only tried to pry the piece from her hands to protect her. Buying an abstract painting at Marshall's was, well, it wasn't even a painting. They were both a bit bloodied now, but he had at least succeeded in wresting the offending canvas from her and destroying it. Gary was certain that when the police arrived, they would assist him in pointing out the error of the poor woman's ways.
Clean speech.
For Sherry, it was all about the dishwasher, which only she must load, and which, unequivocally, she refused to unload. She had considered softening her position, but had turned an unmarked corner and could not find the way back. The negotiator, her boss, mother, and high school principal, not one, despite their turns at the bullhorn, had volunteered to empty the machine, but instead wasted their time with talk of her guns and hostages.
Foul play.
After having searched in vain across the desert's landscape for 2 days, and now very sunburned, hungry, and tired, Paul found that he was losing patience with this stupid game of hide and go seek.
Big Bang.
Dr. Callius crossed the street very slowly and in zigzags to avoid being hit by any neutrinos. He was, of course, struck not by a neutrino, by an automobile made up of decidedly less exotic particles.
Dye job.
The new videos of Bin Laden came as a Mother's Day surprise to hairstylist Jeanette Glauberflatz of Troy, New York. There on CNN was the man whose beard she had been paid to trim, darken, and relax. The high fee, blindfold, the plain SUV with darkened windows, they all made sense now. He wanted me to do his pubes, and I said, hell no. They laughed together and watched SpongeBob on VHS over tea.
Overdrive.
Buddha's mind wandered to his bespoke white pearl electric Bentley with its gleaming bamboo interior trim and saffron linen seating. Just yesterday, he and Jesus, having left the chatty Mohammed behind, had taken it out on a freshly paved stretch of highway, and at a convent quiet 100 miles an hour, They both had what can only be described as a religious experience.
From the oven.
Hermione lifted her right ass cheek off the faux leather seat with mechanical precision, careful to compensate by lowering her right shoulder to a sympathetic degree. The fart was going to come out post-haste. And it would be far better, she thought, if it escaped seated instead of whilst heading for the door of the crowded boardroom, dragging the rancid, accusatorially faithful, viscous effluence behind her. A momentary bodily wince accompanied the release. What emanated forth, all but completely silently, wasn't a fetid pume at all, but rather the proprietor of a Parisian boulangerie, who could not even pronounce the word fart, and who smelled of freshly baked baguettes. No matter how pleasant his aroma, however, the baker, like the flatulence he replaced, was going to stick around for a while. She pulled off the most convincing, "Who brought the French baker?" shrug that she could muster before returning her guilt-tinged gaze to the jangle of financials spread before her. Tell me that hasn't happened to you. The baby lies sleeping, crisply tucked into its lace-trimmed bassinet, peaceful exhalations gently flaring perfect nostrils. But whose infant was it, and how had the crib gotten into Rita's apartment?
Low tide.
The sun was setting, and the bleat of the last furry's horn distracted Cecily, who cleared her hair with a sandy hand to better hear it. There would not be time to waste if she wanted to catch it and get home that evening, so she hastily grabbed and splayed the handles of her beach bag and jammed into it damp towel, flip-flops, lotion, and her paperback. Cecily raced single-mindedly through the dunes and for the pier beyond, parting the dusk with her sparkly swimsuit. So single-mindedly, in fact, that she forgot her brother Egbert, who she had buried nearby her beach encampment up to his chin in the sand. Sand which grew heavier and cooler with every inch of the approaching tide. Unable to turn his head to look around, he chided his now on board the last ferry sister for playing another one of her silent treatment practical jokes. Where's your brother?
Close call.
Fire rapidly engulfed a modest home on Hummingbird Lane, West Nutcliff, in hours before dawn of Christmas Day, taking the lives of resident Claude and Hermione Ketz, both 88, and their son Herman Ketz, 42, former maintenance engineer at the long-shuttered Cherished Dream Fish Cannery. The tragedy also struck Herman's 7 children, who ranged in age from 16 years to 13 months of age, as well as his 3 pit bulls, 5 iguana, and 2 Komodo dragon lizards. Miraculously, Herman's wife Mona escaped the blaze without harm, along with an also unscathed and unnamed male friend of the family. There are bad fires and fortuitous fires.
I dream.
So there Gerard was, and there she was, and as for getting the genie back in the bottle, he had spent hours trying so far, and he couldn't get her to go anywhere at all.
Make way.
Chet's prostate, diagnosed as enlarged, had now become quite enraged, and no longer content to block only his urine flow. Expressing newfound ambition, it was blocking traffic leading to the Lincoln Tunnel.
Sad taste.
Shark attacks had been as uncommon as Lupe was unprepossessing, and while momentarily mourned, she was not in all truth going to be missed. Much to the townfolk's chagrin, however, the shark, now with an appetite for human flesh, began increasingly to eat more beautiful, more popular bathers. How dare you? Thank you.
Too helpful.
Mr. Hammerman gripped his chest and fell to the floor, his head rebounding and making a vaguely soft ball against bat sound. Marcia and Bert both declared that they were trained in CPR, and cleared the space around the unresponsive dinner guest. But which one would perform the life-saving technique? After some time, they decided upon rock, paper, scissors. They'll get to it.
Degree of difficulty.
Under the weather, Charlene had visited various medical websites to ascertain the cause of her malaise, and the results were mixed. She was either suffering from dengue fever, spongiform encephalitis, rickets, palsy, the vapors, or, heaven forfend, haunted colon. Her general practitioner, however, diagnosed her as experiencing discomfort as a result of wiping too hard.
Bad trip.
To Charlemagne, Gerald had said, "Hey, dude." To Tesla, "What's up, dude?" To Aristotle, "Yo, dude." To Lincoln, "Watch out, dude." Perhaps the gift of time travel could have been better bestowed.
Particle.
The rush hour particle. Physics. Thank you. I'm sorry, Persephone, I stepped on you. The rush hour cars slipped past one another with the nonchalant grace of schooling fish, until one, inexplicably head-on sedan, did not. Traffic offered no escape in either direction or speed, and Carlos had no alternative but to tighten his grip on the wheel and await the inevitable impact. No sooner were the two cars for the smallest slice of a second nose to nose than they were in one another's rearview mirrors. Now disoriented and himself in the wrong lane, Carlos, after a lifetime of evidence to the contrary, nonetheless expected the next vehicle, in this case a tractor-trailer transporting cinder block, to pass right through him, and his car as well. There wasn't much left of the car or its driver to identify either one. Elusive and mysterious, the Higgs boson particle was also proving to be quite mischievous.
No treat.
The mixture of herbs and a little alcohol was likely, just as the carnival salesman had said, good for what ails you. What ailed Tom, however, was a highly destructive, non-organic, self-replicating, neurodegenerative prion disorder that had been carried to Earth on a malevolent meteor.
Write like me.
Claire knew that she was only as good as her last poem, so, having written what she thought was her best, she attempted suicide by prescription drug overdose. The dose left her damaged but alive and ready to write again in a completely new style, unfortunately, that of a little-known but published poet from Rhode Island named James Charterbroad, who successfully sued her upon releasing her top-selling post-suicide attempt reflection book.
Old paint.
Carol Ann, perturbed by her lagging art sales and cognizant of the fact that equestrian-themed paintings, in contrast, seemed to be moving rather briskly, renamed her recent paintings Naked Martyrdom, My Sex, My Death, and Love is Pain to Photo Finish, The Home Stretch, and They're Off. That should do it.
Typecast.
Martina lived in a building filled mostly with those who, like herself, made their livings pretending very well to be others. Roger, her neighbor and exception per contra, did not make his living as a thespian. There are various factors that could have compensated for this deficiency, but Robert possessed not a single one. Neither did he possess the faculties required to discern that the vacancy in her stare was not there for him to fill. His proximity to Martina, far too often, always without invitation, and far too close for comfort, was in truth stalking. As luck would have it, she was rehearsing for the starring role in a film about an unfortunate woman herself being stalked, and so she tolerated his behavior as it was, in effect, unpaid coaching. The movie's production was halted and Roger was summarily put under arrest, where he waited in prison as Martina decided whether to press charges. Luck was not on his side, as her next acting opportunity called for her to portray a widow mourning her murdered husband's killer by visiting his killer, serving a life sentence in jail. I should finish my story. Very lucky guy, very lucky.
Band practice.
Nothing in the mail today but bills and unwanted solicitations. Nothing. How would one know if their book was being censored? Wouldn't they, whoever they are, mail an angry letter matched to one sent to your publishing house? A letter asking that books be removed from bookstores? That all future printings must cease? Or would they send an email? No, that didn't sound right. Doesn't sound official. Perhaps the first sign would be a letter, or better yet, an alarmed call from a librarian, from a brave little rural library at that, letting Miriam know that her ribald, frank, and frankly shocking masterpiece and bestseller had been stripped from the shelves by a local official, cleric, or member of the constabulary. Miriam was so filled with umbrage about her book being censored that she felt motivated to sit down that very day in front of her computer and finally write the damn thing. But first, she must watch her shows.
Prognosis.
The operation was over. Nell was about to wake from the anesthesia, and her chance for survival, despite the unforeseen complications, would have to be considered excellent. So you could say that it all went well, if you were to overlook the fact that she had not okayed the admittedly completely unnecessary procedure, and that Paul, despite his best intentions and evident natural talents, was not a surgeon of any kind.
Instant karma.
Daniel just couldn't understand why trouble seemed to follow him wherever he went. He ran, flaming torch in hand, through the darkened fuel depot to find the answer.
The job ahead.
You did 2 rings there. Is that special? I like that. Marcus had, but for one fraction of a minute, lived an exemplary existence. It would take disproportionately long time, however, to clean up all the blood and dispose of the bodies.
Social premeditation.
Beatrice shared with her interrogators that every single one of her victims had been her Facebook friends, and that, if they truly wanted to avoid being murdered by her, they should have taken some evasive action, as they certainly had ample warning of her mood and intentions.
Avoid.
There was light on Mars, and shadow as well, as surfaces which one might find familiar, but there was no life, unless, of course, you counted Rinaldo Ernit, who had, through the unlikely process of wishing, transported himself there in 1997 to avoid accompanying his girlfriend Maura to a Jack and Jill bridal shower.
Get her drift.
Felicia casually pointed with her pinky, freed from its dainty cup handle, out to the yard, its features simplified by the snow. George is out there somewhere, under all that mess. Her girlfriends were not accustomed to any humor at all from Felicia, and certainly expected none of such a dark nature.
Details.
Shoes, glasses, handbag, all flew away as the air drew her arms and legs into a mock crucifixion. Her face rippled giddily, and she could see through gust-pummeled eyes was the earth stretched taut across a magnificence, pulling her down. The tragic thing was, Sharon hadn't the slightest clue how to skydive.
Bad bet.
2 days, 4 hours, 13 minutes. It was a good thing the casino never closed. But how long could it take, thought Mona, for a gentleman friend to return from the restroom?
Bagman.
Philip loved Ryan and would have gone to the ends of the earth for him, but not, as it turns out, to unclaimed baggage. While on vacation in France together, they had argued about when they would visit what, and who would carry which, and where they would eat whatever. They argued so that Philip had almost left Ryan in Paris. He softened his position, though, and they returned home together, but with Philip sitting by himself in first class as consolation. That the flight had landed without Ryan's valise was just too bad for him, and although later rerouted, it could, as far as Philip was concerned, sit there at the airport forever, because of the fact that Ryan was folded neatly inside. Bags may look alike. You have to be careful.
Bad fit.
Danita's problem with Juan, and in fact his problem with her problem with Juan, was that Danita did not like the size of his head, saying that it was too big. Well, that was hardly something he could change, and so Juan soon forgot the quirky Danita as well as their disappointing date, and she would simply move on, along with her roughly head-shaped box.
Higher ground.
Shelley was pretty sure that there were a few veiled insults, condescending remarks, and sarcastic salutations thrown her way. But to Shelley, it was all just talk. She was bigger than that. The party was otherwise mostly fun, and in any case, she had poisoned the pâté.
Do the jerk.
Her dance moves had become erratic, and her expression quite vacant. If Clarence didn't know any better, he would have thought that she was having some kind of perhaps epileptic fit. He thought to investigate further into her condition, but left the party instead, as he knew nothing about girls, and he wasn't about to learn now.
Postmodern.
Rhonda insisted to herself that she wouldn't trade her battered painting of fruit for all the real apples and oranges in the world. But alas, there hadn't been any fresh fruit for some months now. Wrapped in plastic bags, were there really so many at one time? The elements had nonetheless taken their toll on not only her painting, but on each and every one of her most precious possessions. She had not seen a man for some time either, and certainly not a gentleman. But if she did come across a gentleman, she admitted to herself that she would probably first consider eating him.
Read the label.
What was at first a terrible personal tragedy had now become a mystery as well. Lisa had checked all the adverse reactions indicated on all her doctor-prescribed herbal and homeopathic menopause medications, and not one of them listed murdering and dividing up the body of one's husband as a side effect.
Chilling.
Anger, shock, fear. Among all human facial expressions, that of joy was the most fleeting, the most impermanent, and Reginald had yet to capture it, despite a basement freezer full of faces. Ladies and gentlemen, DJ Truemaster for our break.